So I want to start off dedicating this talk to one of my loved ones who's currently going through kind of the downturn of her own career. And so she knows better than anybody that with me, I'm not really great at giving general advice, but I prefer through my own perspective and kind of like the book of Earnest to share my experiences. And so through that, I want to share with you guys why we shouldn't choose a linear career path and all the mistakes that come along with that. So next slide. But first, I need to take you all back. Before Twitter, before Facebook, but a lot of TRL, there was August 2003. And we had the chart, what was at the top of the charts was from a little-known couple of African-American laureates, Beyonce Knowles and Jay-Z Carter, had Crazy in Love. It also coincided with me moving from Little Rock to Columbia University. Next slide. And at Columbia, my first year there, within a week of being there, I gathered a number of my classmates just to have discussions. And those ranged from Jay-Z versus Nas, remember that rap battle? Warhol versus Jackson Pollock, we were nerds. And also Shake Shack versus In-N-Out. I'll let you guys decide which one is more overrated. But there was one question that I really wasn't able to participate in and didn't feel prepared for. It was when a classmate looked to me and said, "Hey, Ernest, what are you looking to target, Harvard Law or Harvard Med School?" This was the first week of school. I was in Little Rock 2 weeks ago. I thought we made it. Like, Mama, we made it. I'm in the Ivy League, right? But I learned from that experience that it's thought that ambitious people should get on a track as fast as possible. And so if you don't get on a career track, you're going to be left behind. And so my goal for this conversation, next slide, 2 slides, that's Columbia, beautiful, is to share why we shouldn't go after these linear career paths in 2 anecdotes. One, right after college, and then the second, after business school. And so, next slide. Many of the reasons people are looking for jobs is normal life events, right? So they're about, you're graduating school, or like we've seen in this last downturn, a number of individuals have had to put themselves back on the job search because of layoffs. I've experienced both. And right after that experience as an 18-year-old, I learned at Columbia, okay, this is the path for me. I'm going to be in finance. It's really safe and nothing could ever happen to it, right? And that was really a result of the fact that coming from my socioeconomic background, didn't want to move back home, and the peers that I looked up to were in investment banking. It was close proximity to Columbia. Oh, and yeah, I really appreciated and admired the compensation structure. So that's what led to me deciding on this track. But it didn't go as smoothly as I originally thought it would. And I found myself right after graduation on a plane, headed back to my childhood room to think about I had nothing to show for my investment, except for an expensive receipt, or what you guys may call a degree. And so at that point, I did what any normal 22-year-old who calls himself ambitious would do. Next slide. I created a PowerPoint for my parents and presented to them what my next plans would be. This is actually one slide. I didn't want to really show how weird I am by all the things and all the goals, like retiring at 38, not happening. But it did give me structure. And so through those paths, I did obtain within 4 weeks my first analyst job in investment banking. And then I did see it as achievable to go into business school and continue my path, because that's what I saw my friends and people I looked up to do. And so this led into the next journey, which was going into business school and getting my dream job, which led me to, next slide, San Francisco. It's never that sunny, guys. I'm just gonna look at it right now. It's like, it should have Carl the Fog somewhere. And so with San Francisco, recent MBA grad, new hope, had the dream job that I wrote about in my business school essays, working in social enterprise as a consultant. And I thought I had already written out my legacy, so all I have to do is execute. I was on a new track, but it was my track, one that I've seen other people do, that look like me, that have had similar experiences to me. I was not prepared for anything to derail the track that I was on. And so when I was thinking that I was going to have a dream job, it actually turned into a nightmare. And within 6 months of working there, 8 months of from graduating business school, I was fired. And so for someone who's always trying to keep up, stay ahead, I wrote it out in my essays. It has to happen, right? It didn't. And so I found myself in a new wilderness, career wilderness, not knowing where to turn. Next slide. And with that struggle face. All right, I'm gonna take a stop. Just stay with me, guys. That is a picture from when, not a brag, but it might sound like one, when I was climbing a volcano in Guatemala. And I originally was, when Lisa approached me, I was gonna talk about how it's counterintuitive to climb a volcano on a midnight trail with Jordans and a hoodie. But I pitched that to a couple friends and they were like, no, that's just stupid. So, all right, going back. So I felt like I had no hope. I would talk to my friends less, talk to my parents less, and I started to second guess every decision that I made. And a lot of that was due to the fact that I was mimicking other people's milestones. I was trying to fit myself in a specific box based on what I was seeing instead of creating my own journey. And so in this life-changing event, I took a different approach. And so I need to find a new North Star and a new route to get there. And so next slide. VC. It's not like I was picking something easier to get in, right? But I knew sort of what they did, and I had done the experience before in an internship in business school. And so I felt that I needed to first take a step back after, 6 months of in sorrow, right? But I knew feeling pity for myself and my severance was never going to sustain me for the future. So next slide. I looked at my career equation, but in a different way. So I knew the knowns, right? African-American, Southern, MBA, former reformed investment banker, failed consultant in San Francisco. And I knew what I wanted to solve for, right? Like I knew my equation, right? So I knew venture capital. But what's the variable? What am I solving for? So I first tried to identify, okay, what's the industry like? And I didn't find numbers that helped me out. I was selfishly searching for any anecdote, any archetype that I could hold on to that had similar identifiers to me, right? And when I looked up the numbers, it was like, okay, 42% of VCs have an MBA. But that 42% is a majority of it is from Stanford and Harvard. I didn't go there. Not to mention, most of the articles that I read showed that prominent startup investors said it's a waste of time to even get an MBA for 2 years. And I'm on the hook for over 100K. Then lastly, you see, 67% of all VCs are male. Then read that over, white male. So there's a diversity issue with it. All that put together, you see, with an industry that's been shrinking by 20% over the last 10 years in the number of firms, this seems really idiotic and stubborn. But I felt I had to try. And so next slide. I had to bring together all those broken crayons and those experiences and try to build out something that could show that I was a capable, not just a capable candidate, but someone who could excel in this industry and has a track record. So I found out, I'll share 3 steps that I took. So I found out what they did and what they need to be good at, not what identified or classified that they were good at something. 2, I found out how I could get that experience. And then 3, I'll share at the end of 3 what I did in my entire approach. So I took my crayons and found out, like, what the hell do VCs even do, right? They can't just be meeting startups and entrepreneurs, volunteering for talks and panels and speaking in third person. But what I realized, or what Earnest realized, that was supposed to be a joke, was that through talking to so many individuals, there are only 2 main things you need. You need to develop a sound network of entrepreneurs, and second, next slide, you need a superpower. And so there are 2 ways you could have a superpower. One I didn't feel adequate in was having experience in functional expertise. So you're a marketer or you are a software engineer and you've helped a company grow in the past. Or second, you can have deep industry expertise and knowledge. And so that's when was the first time that I started seeing my prior experience as not broken crayons, but golden coins and golden tickets that'll get me to where I need to go. Next slide. Second, as I mentioned, the step was, how can I get the experience before I have the experience? So many times I would go into meetings and people would say, well, you have industry expertise, but you've never worked with that many startups. Or the startup that you founded really didn't do much. And so I determined that I need to develop this track record on my free time. And so I slept a lot less, but I was eventually connected to the right people. And I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for these 2 organizations. Backstage Capital, to give them a plug, is an amazing seed stage venture capital firm based here in LA that invests in startups that have at least 1 minority founder. And so it's dealing with that issue. So I was able to meet so many great entrepreneurs and learn about the business of making deals in venture. Second was Camelback Ventures, which is a ed tech accelerator. Through Aaron and his team there, I was able to get one-on-one experience of advising startups on how they can grow. Next slide. Lastly, the third step for me was really about having a different approach and being open and vulnerable. That's something that I wasn't doing in the past. I wanted to go into my own lab as a mad scientist, conjure up a plan and execute and resurface like nothing was wrong to my friends and family. That wasn't the right approach for this one because I wasn't going to simply find a blueprint of somebody who was similar to me. I was actually going to try to search out for collaboration partners, people who could inspire me and people who could help me not as some type of identity, like a simple identity of an MBA or former banker, but Earnest and all that comes along with Earnest, as I talk in third person again and act like I'm serious. That was the key for me, and it gave me the opportunity to crystallize what my personal path would be, and I saw the difference. Individuals knew, okay, I know how to help Earnest now. And so, last slide, I've learned through this experience that careers are not linear paths. They're actually, like everything in life, moving targets. How can you find where you need to move now based on new information? How can you take control of your narrative and show that you have what it takes, you have a unique expertise to not only help your company, but your industry and the world? So this makes me think back to that question that I got when I was 18. Earnest, are you targeting Harvard Law or Harvard Med School? I didn't have an answer at all back then, but I have one now. I don't know if those are the paths I'll take, but I do know I'll take the right one for me. And I refuse to mimic someone else's career path. Thank you.